Welcome in to another episode of my Dynasty Fantasy Football YouTube. Today I'm looking at some Dynasty breakout players. Make sure to like, comment, and most importantly, subscribe if you haven't. Let's go. Our first player, Tank Dell. So, Tank Dell, I really think I've been rising on a lot lately, especially as I look over some things. Last year, 11 games played in his rookie season. 47 catches, 709 yards, 7 touchdowns on 75 targets, 4.3 catches and 64.5 yards per game. So it's a lot of yards per catch. 15 PPR points per game. That's really good, especially for a rookie. Now, one thing I want to do on the channel, present more facts, more things that are not just, oh, I feel this way. We want to present more. So why do I think Tank Dell is going to break out? Number one, a strong rookie year. Rookies that have 15 PPR points per game typically succeed. Secondly, I've combed over, I'm not going to list everything, but I've combed over a lot of media. And you see that CJ Stroud constantly talks about Tank Dell. I don't know how much that matters, but it definitely doesn't hurt. And then we have some strong advanced metrics for Tank Dell. Now, let's look into that. So, Tank Dell had 1,070 air yards in just 11 games. That's a lot. That's a lot of air yards in just 11 games. Very strong. And he also had 2.36 yards per route run, ranks 14th among wide receivers. It's very good for a rookie to rank 14th in that category. And that's really, so yards per route run really shows when you are running a route, you contribute yards to the offense. That's what we want. It's a very, very strong indicator of success. So this statistic shows that Tank Dell was very efficient when he was running routes. And that's something that we like to see and is a major predictor of future success. Now, for these reasons, I've been rising on Tank Dell in redraft. I've moved him up a few spots as we've gone higher than his ADP. And I just think it's very clear that he's talented and has a great spot. I don't want to let Stephon Diggs, an older player who was obviously in decline for the last 10 games of last season, scare me too much. I think we should look at the talent of Tank Dell and say that at wide receiver 25, it gives you some room for upside. There is room for Tank Dell to be a wide receiver 1. Now, there's room for him to be lower, but I still think a wide receiver 25, it's a good redraft price and higher than ADP. So I think it makes sense to call him a breakout. Our next breakout player, Dalton Kincaid. And Kincaid also was a rookie last year. So also actually an older rookie, just like Tank Dell. And he had a pretty solid rookie season for a tight end. 16 games, he had 73 catches, 673 yards, 2 touchdowns, 91 targets, 4.6 catches and 42.1 yards a game, 9.4 PPR points per game. Now, that doesn't sound all that great, right? I mean, but it doesn't tell the full story. Kincaid played the first 5 games, and then he missed week 6 due to an injury. Over the first 5 weeks, he averaged 3.4 catches and 23.6 yards a game and no touchdowns at all. That's not good, right? I mean, we wouldn't want to start that in our fantasy lineup. But over the last, the rest of the season, 5.1 catches, 50.5 yards a game, still only 2 touchdowns, but that paces to 87 catches and 858 yards over a full 17-game season. Now, I think it's somewhat related to Dawson Knox missing time, but the one thing I think people forget is that Dawson Knox was still healthy when Kincaid started to break out. It happened in the first week back from this injury. So it wasn't all because of Dawson Knox going out. Now, why do I think Dalton Kincaid is going to break out? A year or 2 breakout after a strong rookie year. We know he has a good connection with Josh Allen. They spent first-round draft capital on him. Kincaid had 11.1 expected fantasy points per game compared to his 9.4 actual. I think it's because he's a tight touchdown regression candidate. He only had 2 touchdowns on 91 targets in a high-powered offense. That seems unlikely to continue, especially since he's a red zone threat. I mean, he's a big player. He should succeed in the red zone. Now, In redraft, I have Kincaid at tight end 5, which would be better than he did last year. I don't think it's an unusual rank or anything, but I think it's clear that Dalton Kincaid will develop into a full-time player. And for those reasons, I would call him a breakout compared to his rookie year. But let's remember, just because someone's a breakout doesn't mean that they're a dynasty buy. You can say he's a breakout. Someone thinks he's going to break out more, and maybe Dalton Kincaid would be a sell. So that's one thing I want to get across on this video is these are just players I think are going to improve, not necessarily talking about what the market action is to do on these players. Now, if you're enjoying this video, you like my YouTube content, I suggest you sign up for the Patreon. You get my rankings, access to the Discord, and the ability to ask in advance questions for the YouTube videos, which we'll have at the end here. Tiers begin at just $6 a month. And I also have Patreon video roster reviews available only for patrons. And I just really appreciate everyone who signs up. And it really goes to support my content on here. And I promise you won't regret it. Now, our third breakout player, Anthony Richardson. So I just want to say this start. Yes, everyone's saying Anthony Richardson's going to break out. Yes, I know that. I know this isn't original, right? There is no original content. That's why I don't claim it. I don't claim that I'm the only person saying this. Everyone's saying it. But I happen to agree. So, it is what it is. Now, last year, there was a very small sample size. Richardson played 4 games. He had 59.5% completion, 3 touchdowns, interception, 6.9 yards per attempt. He did have 25 carries for 136 yards, 4 touchdowns, 18.4 fantasy points per game. But he left these games early. I mean, it's really a minimal sample size. Now, why do I think Anthony Richardson will break out? One of the main reasons that I actually have a good feeling about him is that Alec Pierce ran one of the most numbers of routes of any wide receiver in the NFL. Yet he did absolutely nothing. The Colts added Adonai Mitchell to improve the Alec Pierce role. I think that's going to add a lot to their offense. And then we know, obviously, about Anthony Richardson's high rushing upside, especially at the goal line, where he scored 4 touchdowns. I also fully believe in Colts head coach Shane Steichen. I'm not saying that Richardson's going to be the QB1 overall, but I do think he'll break out for fantasy. Oddly, I don't know if I even have him high compared to most. In 4-point passing touchdowns, I rank him QB5. In 6-point passing touchdowns, QB7. I do think there's a significant difference with Anthony Richardson between those two formats. If you get extra points for rushing touchdowns versus passing, I would like him a lot more. If you don't, then a lot less. But it's probably lower than most at this point. And it is important to note, like I said earlier, but even more so with Anthony Richardson. Justin Fields was great for fantasy football last year. And he didn't deliver for real life. And he is now not currently a starting quarterback. He's lost a lot of dynasty value. I'm not saying that Anthony Richardson is going to be good or that he's not. The fantasy upside's impossible to deny. So I'm all in on the breakout. And if you have him on your dynasty team, I'm okay with having him, even at a high price. But I don't have Anthony Richardson in the same tier as in dynasty as players with the same fantasy upside like Jalen Hurts and Lamar Jackson, who already have long-term contracts. So that's why I'm just a little lower on the Anthony Richardson than those guys. But that doesn't mean that he's not going to break out. And it doesn't mean that he's not going to be good for fantasy. But that kind of stuff doesn't get clicks. So, as much as it sucks, to be honest. My last breakout player, Garrett Wilson. And yes, everyone is saying this. I'm just trying to say, I'm sorry that the breakout players are very popular, but it is what it is. I wanted to call attention to some things with Garrett Wilson. I haven't talked about it. In 2022, he had 83 catches, 1,103 yards, 4 touchdowns, 147 targets, 4.9 catches, and 64.9 yards a game, 12.7 PPR points per game. Last year, somehow he had 95 catches, but fewer yards. Just 3 touchdowns, 168 targets, and 5.6 catches and 61.3 yards a game, 12.5 PPR points per game. So he's actually worse in 2023, despite having 21 more targets and 12 more catches. As strange as that is. Now, Why is Garrett Wilson going to break out? Better quarterback play. I mean, anything's better than Zach Wilson. And insane target volume. Let's go through some statistics. He had a 30.1% target share in 2023, 7th among wide receivers. That's very good. His 168 targets were 4th overall. He had an incredible 1,707 air yards with a 42.7% air yard share. That's obviously alpha elite wide receiver numbers. But he had just a 67.9% catchable target rate, 65th among wide receivers. So that's not so good. That's not good. That shows that he was not having a lot of catchable targets, which is why he only caught 95 of 168 of them, which is insane if you actually think about it. Now, in redraft, I have Garrett Wilson at wide receiver 7. So considering that he hasn't broken 13 PPR points a game, to say that he's going to be a mid wide receiver 1 would be a massive breakout. It usually takes about 17 to 18 points a game to do that. It's basically impossible for someone with Wilson's type of target volume to fail as badly as he has in his career. I'm sure even Tyrod Taylor could do better than what the Jets had over the last 2 years. But Aaron Rodgers, if healthy, will be way, way better. I mean, Wilson was 65th among wide receivers in catchable targets. So there's only room to go up. I think Garrett Wilson is going to be a massive breakout. I'm actually kind of okay with his dynasty price. I think people still see Garrett Wilson as risky, whereas the statistics show that he is an alpha wide receiver who's just been screwed over by bad quarterback play. Now, I did say I would have some Patreon questions, so let's get into some of them. I've seen some opinions out there push back on the idea of CJ Stroud being ranked as dynasty quarterback 2, ahead of guys like Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts, because Stroud will never possess the rushing upside to be ranked ahead of those two. Can you provide your rationale as to why Stroud is justified as dynasty quarterback 2? Well, for me, it's somewhat looking at the upside. I mean, Patrick Mahomes is certainly capable of running, but he's never had a season with more than 400 rushing yards. Stroud in 2023 was not that far off of what Mahomes did as a rusher in 2018. So I'm perfectly comfortable with Stroud in the value range. He's also 5 or more years younger than Josh Allen. And while I do like Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts, more so with Josh Allen, I think I have some more concerns in terms of longevity. But the difference between Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts is I think Josh Allen could still be a really good fantasy quarterback if he doesn't run at all, whereas Jalen Hurts, I'm not so sure about that. So that's why I have Stroud higher. And I think I don't have any issue with that. What's your interpretation of the Las Vegas tight end coach's recent comments on Bowers and his role on the team cause for concern? I have zero concerns, partially because I think people have reasonable expectations with Brock Bowers. Since he's only like the tight end 10 to tight end 12 in redraft, he won't be a bust if he isn't amazing as a rookie because people don't have unreasonable expectations. The Raiders had a new GM this offseason, Tom Telesco. He drafted Bowers. He inherited Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers, and Michael Mayer. Adams and Myers could easily be gone in 2025, along with the entire Raiders coaching staff. So, yeah, I have zero concerns. None at all. In a 1 QB, half PPR dynasty leagues, what's the optimal round you should target quarterback 1? This is not how we play. I certainly don't focus on quarterback in 1 QB dynasty, but there's no optimal round. I'm willing to take them in, I guess, as early as the 4th round or as late as the 15th round, if that's how it works out. But yeah, no, there's no optimal round. How much should 0.5 point per carry propel running backs in redraft rankings? A lot. If you think about it, running backs can have 200 or more carries, which means this is an extra 100 points or more. It's a game changer. So a lot. I would focus on running backs in this type of format, especially those who get a high carry volume over maybe those who are more involved in the receiving game. Now, if you like the video, make sure to drop a like and leave a comment with your thoughts. As always, the best way to support the channel is to subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notifications bell so you can be notified about all my exciting content as it drops. Of course, if you want my best fantasy football advice, it's available on the Patreon. Dynasty, redraft, start sits coming soon, and more. Every sign-up helps support my independent content. Once again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all later.